just have to search for the official page of Radio Caribbean International. And we should also be up on YouTube, so you can check us out there as well. Look back in time for some history for the day. In the year 1580, Francis Drake completed his circumnavigation of the world, sailing from Plymouth, England, aboard the ship the Golden Hind. In the year 1687, the Acropolis in Athens was attacked by the Venetian army in an attempt to expel the Turks, damaging the famous Parthenon. The year 1687 saw the City Council of Amsterdam vote to support Prince William of Orange's invasion of England, known as the Glorious Revolution in the Netherlands. In the year 1901, the United Kingdom annexed the Ashanti Kingdom and placed it under the governor of the Gold Coast, modern-day Ghana. And in the year 1918, on this day, the Meuse-Argonne offensive began in western France, the largest and most costly American offensive during World War I. Over 1 million soldiers participating in that battle. And did you know that on this day, back in the year 1960, Cuban leader Fidel Castro delivered a 4-hour and 29-minute-long speech at the United Nations. Of course, United Nations General Assembly on right now in New York. We now head across to our dish of the day.
Serving now, the Daily Dish.
And welcome back to our program for this afternoon, this Friday. And of course, we still are seeing quite a lot of discussion about the matter of crime in the airwaves, on radio talk shows, and perhaps for some people they're not fully satisfied with what are the outcomes of certain police action and police interventions right about now. In fact, there was a statement by the island's police commissioner, Mr. Vern Gard, indicating that he was going to deploy his top brass senior officers, as well as himself, onto the airwaves to boost up and ramp up police communications and to also tackle misinformation regarding crime in the country. And he made a particular point of indicating that he was going to be sending out individuals to the various talk shows on the island, and also the introduction of a police newscast, as he put it, to be broadcast regularly at 5 p.m., I think maybe every day. Those, of course, undertakings one would have thought would be generally welcome, but for some strange reason, are finding criticism in some quarters. Another matter, of course, is that of the police canine dog, Tyson. And according to the investigators thus far into the matter, the toxicology report coming back effectively suggesting that there is no sign of poisoning by rat bait, and also indications there that they would be doing further testing to certainly completely rule out any issues, any possibility of poison. And so, of course, they're looking at a number of other areas to be tested, including things like the lead levels, or heavy metals like mercury, for example, which could be used as poison. So they're trying to be as thorough as possible in this investigation, which, of course, has been utilized quite a lot and publicized quite a lot in among certain circles as a sign of police or suggestion of police corruption, and the whole issue of the K9 unit and the efficacy of the K9 unit. Of course, points have been made that we still do have a K9 unit and there still is another dog operating, and that a request has been made for further assistance from the French government, French authorities, to boost up the numbers of dogs for that person. And rightfully so. They can certainly be very, very useful animals in terms of intelligence, in terms of surveillance and identification of materials at ports and in other locations, and of course as well in the matter of search and rescue. So that, of course, is very is one aspect of the whole issue of the police. But according to the police, they've actually been doing a relatively good job, and the data in terms of the level, the impacts of what they've been showing is effectively showing a reduction in crime, particularly a reduction in the number of burglaries and in the number of robberies. Now, crime is a mixed bag. We quite often lump everything together and we call it crime, but crime has so many different facets, from actions which could be at a domestic level, issues of domestic abuse or domestic violence, abuse of children, sexual offenses. That's one aspect of it, but it can certainly also have, it can also point to the potential for economic struggles within a society, and some more directly than others, especially in the case of robberies. Not seeing as many robberies as before perhaps might be a sign that we're seeing more persons gainfully employed, not engaging in those types of activities. Not to say that it's not happening. It's definitely happening. But you are seeing some reductions in the numbers, and definitely that's where we want to see it go. Of course, the most controversial metric that is used when we speak about crime is that of homicides. And what we're seeing from the data coming out of the police, however, is that a lot of the homicides are very much tied to gangs. They're tied to gang-on-gang violence. And it is a very difficult aspect to tackle when you're seeing those types of killings that are gang-related, if in fact you've got feuds going on between gangs. And some people may tell you that if all things were nice and dandy, perhaps there would be no gang violence, right? In terms of, successful gang operations, they're doing their own thing and everybody's happy. But of course, when you actually do have, conflicts that are going on, and you have disturbances in terms of the flow of narcotics, then you can sometimes see eruptions in terms of gang violence, because that's when things become pressed. And so it's a interesting dynamic that we find ourselves in terms of this issue of gang violence. And certainly it's not something that we want to be able to see, because at the end of the day, it is impacting families, it's impacting communities, it is leaving children orphaned, it is really having a negative impact on society. And of course, nobody likes to hear the idea of another murder. Of course, it may not necessarily be somebody within the community that you're close to, but just the whole idea that somebody has lost their life, it can never really be a good thing for any of us in the society. And so we do have a clip that is available from HTS, which kind of captures some of the information coming out of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force at their press conference, which was held yesterday. Let's take in a listen.
February 1st to September 24th, 2020. From January 1st to September 24th, 2025, authorities recorded 10,555 offenses compared to 12,522 in the same period the previous year. This represents a 16% drop in the number of offenses, with most cases stemming from the Central Division.
1,965 cases in the total number of accepted cases. Notwithstanding the reduction in the overall number of cases, 1,287 fewer cases, representing 18%, were detected in 2025. The Central Division recorded the majority of crimes, accounting for 42% of total incidents. The Southern Division followed with 35%, while the Northern Division accounted for 23% of the total number of cases.
Superintendent of Police and Head of the Road Safety and Traffic Investigations Department, Troy Lamontine, disclosed that homicide and murder rates are roughly on par with the same period last year. However, law enforcement officials report that officers are concerned about a 105% increase in attempted murder cases.
From January 1 to September 24, 2025, the island has recorded a total of 59 homicides. These include 57 murders, 1 police-related shooting death, and 1 unclassified death. For the same period in 2024, there were a total of 60 homicides, which comprised 58 murders, 2 police-related shooting deaths. There were 41 attempted murder cases recorded in 2025, compared to 20 in 2024, representing a 105% increase. This is significant, as every attempt to unlawfully kill is a potential murder case.
Lamontine also revealed that 7 out of the 8 priority offenses experienced reductions. However, firearm cases increased, marking the only category with a rise in incidents. Firearms remain the most prevalent weapon of choice for murders, with 48 of the 57 cases in 2025 being gun-related. The number of firearm offenses also rose by 4% when compared to the same period in 2024. However, this year marked the highest for the number of firearm and ammunition seizures for any period in the history of record-keeping for St. Lucia's police force.
The number of murders are 1 less, representing a 2% reduction. Burglaries decreased by 178 cases, or 40%. Robberies also decreased by 40 cases, representing 29%. Narcotics offenses reduced by 34 cases, or 14%. Reports of stolen motor vehicles decreased by 21 cases, representing 36%. Stealing from person also reduced by 1 case, 1%. The number of sexual offense cases decreased by 43 cases, or 26%. Firearm offenses was the only category experiencing an increase of 9 cases, or 4% in the period under review.
For the past 5 years, the Central Division has recorded the majority of murders at 51%, except in 2023 when the Southern Sector accounted for the highest number of cases due to a rise in gang and gun violence in Vieux Fort. Thus far in 2025, police have recorded 57 murders, of which investigators have solved 18 or 32%, while they continue to investigate the remaining cases. Investigators classified 27 murders as gang-related, 8 as reprisal killings, 7 as stemming from previous altercations, 4 as domestic disputes, and they are still determining the motives for the remaining 11 cases. Thus far this year, the month of September 2025 has seen the highest number of murders, while March recorded the lowest with only 2 murders. Joachim Duplessis, HTS News Force.
Right, and of course, thanks to HTS for that piece there on the entire matter of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force's update for the first 3 quarters of the year 2025. Of course, the police pointing out to the success of a 16% drop in overall in terms of the number of activities, criminal activities on the island, and also making a point that they have led the most operations ever to date, with a significant rise in the number of operations led. By operations, I'm talking about police, law enforcement operations actually being undertaken, both in terms of intelligence-led operations, a significant rise there by about 25% increase. In terms of tactical operations, nearly doubling the number of tactical operations. They continue to engage in at a similar pace with respect to counter-narcotics operations. Search warrants surged up by about 60% or so. And so, of course, they moved from 315 to 534 search warrants being issued across the island. Traffic checks, that also went up by about 50%. And in terms of tickets issued, certainly a significant rise in the number of tickets, more than doubling, going up by nearly 150%. So it's certainly, we are seeing a more active Royal St. Lucia Police Force in terms of their actions. And another point that was being raised by the commissioner yesterday was the importance of interagency cooperation. And law enforcement is certainly not just about the police. There are a number of other key law enforcement agencies, including the Customs and Excise Department, including, of course, the Bordelais Correctional Facility, the other partners in terms of public safety, like the St. Lucia Fire Service, which play a really important role, and even in terms of responding to accidents and crime scenes. They have a role and responsibility as well. So a lot of effort has to be placed as well in terms of the interagency cooperation, both with local agencies as well as the regional and international agencies. A point being made was that there were, I think, a mention of about 11 extraditions, persons who had committed crimes outside of St. Lucia, sought refuge in St. Lucia, and he was making the point that they have in fact been undertaking a number of extraditions. He made mention of about 4 individuals who recently were sent back to Martinique to face justice in that island for crimes committed, allegedly committed by individuals here in St. Lucia. So that, of course, is really important. It's also really important in terms of boosting the level of cooperation regionally, because the reality is, when we're dealing with these gangs right now, these are not just merely local outfits. They are, you could almost say that these are just franchises of a much larger system that is at play around the Caribbean and perhaps even the world. We've seen the rise, for example, of the quote-unquote 6 and 7 branding of gangs here in St. Lucia. And of course, we know that, a lot of that type of language came out of Trinidad and Tobago. We've been seeing, of course, we know that a lot of it is a transnational and movement of narcotics. And so there are a lot of other individuals and networks that have to be stymied by the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. And they certainly do need to work in cooperation with the broader law enforcement agencies around the world. And of course, especially in terms of intelligence, getting information about what is coming out, what is being shipped, what's likely to be coming onto your shores, that's also really important. And so, of course, that cooperation in part is through agencies such as Impacts, that works across the Caribbean. Of course, the Regional Security Service system. That's another agency that has helped us, especially when we saw the significant spike in violent crimes in the south of the island. The RSS was able to bolster the numbers of officers on the ground. Thankfully, we've been able to since then increase our very own numbers to the extent that, interestingly enough, the Commissioner of Police was saying that we are now also providing support for other police forces in the Caribbean. In the case of, he mentioned Barbados, he mentioned St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Grenada. And so it is certainly telling that we are seeing that level of cooperation, which is important because it helps in terms of building experience, building networks, and partnerships regionally with respect to dealing with crime. Because the crime that we're seeing right now is certainly not, it's not isolated to St. Lucia. It's not isolated to one island. We're seeing how many countries are struggling with this rise in criminal activities. And so certainly the regional approach towards crime fighting is a very important one. Now, that's our dish of the day, so we can head across to take in our weather report.
This has been The Daily Dish.
Girl, I've been so stressed searching for the perfect tiles to complete my home.
Really?
Yeah, it's always the same white, beige, and gray tiles with these tile stores. Like they're all buying from the same place. You're the design expert. Help me, please. I'm fed up.
What are you looking for?
Something different. Something that says Caribbean beauty and suits my personality. Something vibrant and classy with a little razzle dazzle.
Okay, Ms. Razzle Dazzle, I know just the place. Island Style Tile and Bath, they're my #1 store for everything tile. And with their new In Living Color collection, you'll find the most gorgeous tiles to give you that splash of Caribbean flair you're looking for.
That sounds perfect.
I'll even take you myself and throw in a free design consultation.
I'll never say no to that, sis. I can't afford you anyway.
Visit our Island Style showrooms in Castries, Rodney Bay, and View Fort, or call 450-452 or 453 Tile. We'll help bring your vision to life in living color.
This is Radio Caribbean International. It's now time for the weather news.
And that's all, of course, to the 1.1. It's now time for your weather report as of 12 noon today, presented by Island Style Tile and Bath. Forecast for St. Lucia Valley for the next 24 hours. Winds will be blowing from between the southeast and east-southeast near 12 miles per hour or 19 kilometers per hour, becoming calm at times. The weather fair and warm, becoming cloudy at times with a few showers, which may be heavy in some locations, and a chance of isolated thunderstorms. There is an advisory in average reads residents and motorists in areas prone to flooding and landslides are advised to be vigilant and exercise caution. The forecast for the Lesser Antilles: fair to occasionally cloudy skies with a few showers and a chance of isolated thunderstorms. And the tropical weather outlook: unstable conditions together with light winds and high daytime temperatures will cause occasional cloudiness with a few showers and possibly isolated thunderstorms over the Lesser Antilles during the forecast period. Also, an area of low pressure is expected to develop from a tropical wave located in the vicinity of the Greater Antilles today. The system is likely to become a tropical depression as it moves near or over the Bahamas within the next couple of days. Humberto becomes a hurricane at 11 a.m. today. The eye of Hurricane Humberto located near latitude 22.3 degrees north and longitude 57.7 degrees west, or about 638 miles or 1,026 kilometers northeast of St. Lucia. Humberto is moving towards the northwest near 5 miles per hour or 7 kilometers per hour. Maximum sustained winds have increased to near 90 miles per hour or 150 kilometers per hour with higher gusts. Significant strengthening is forecast as Humberto is expected to become a major hurricane this weekend on the forecasted track. Humberto is not expected to affect the Lesser Antilles. Also, two tropical waves over the western and far eastern tropical Atlantic are moving westward at near 10 miles per hour or 17 kilometers per hour. And this has been your weather forecast as of 12 noon today, presented by Island Style Talent Bath.
This has been RCI's Weather News. For more information, call the Weather Hotline at 454-3452. RCI 101 number 1.
Girl, I've been so stressed searching for the perfect tiles to complete my home.
Really?
Yeah, it's always the same white, beige, and gray tiles with the style stores. Like they're all buying from the same place. You're the design expert. Help me, please. I'm fed up.
What are you looking for?
Something different. Something that says Caribbean beauty and suits my personality. Something vibrant and classy with a little razzle dazzle.
Okay, Ms. Razzle Dazzle, I know just the place. Island Style Tile and Bath, they're my number one store for everything tile. And with their new In Living Color collection, you'll find the most gorgeous styles to give you that splash of Caribbean flair you're looking for.
That sounds perfect.
I'll even take you myself and throw in a free design consultation.
I'll never say no to that, sis. I can't afford you anyway.
Visit our Island Style showrooms in Castries, Rodney Bay, and View Fort, or call 450-452 or 453 Tile. We'll help bring your vision to life in living color.
And welcome back to the lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. Of course, the number to call in to tell us what's on your plates today, it is 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. And you can also reach out to us through our WhatsApp number. That is 724-0008. An announcement coming yesterday from the Office of the Prime Minister. And it actually, yesterday read, Cabinet approves permanent establishment of non-established wages public sector employees. And it reads as follows. The Cabinet of Ministers has granted approval for the permanent establishment of non-established public sector employees, often referred to as wage employees, fulfilling a central commitment made in the 2025-2026 budget. Under the Cabinet's decision, this policy will apply to employees who have completed at least 2 years of continuous service. Once implemented, approximately 1,288 workers across government ministries, departments, and agencies are expected to benefit. For many years, these workers have served the government of St. Lucia without the security of permanent status. With this approval, they will gain greater job security, recognition, and stability. Permanent status will also make it easier for workers to access loans, qualify for mortgages, and plan confidently for their families' futures. The Department of the Public Service is currently processing submissions from agencies. This process is scheduled for completion by October the 10th, 2025, after which implementation steps will proceed. The Cabinet's approval reflects the government's philosophy of fairness, dignity, and respect in work. It underscores a commitment to ensure that those who serve the nation are properly recognized, supported, and empowered to move forward with greater stability. And that release coming from the Office of the Prime Minister entitled Cabinet Approves Permanent Establishment of Non-Established Wages or public sector employees. And of course, as had been mentioned in that release, this was in fact a measure that had been announced by the Prime Minister, Honorable Philip J. Pierre, during his 2025-2026 budget address not so long ago, back I think in around May of this year. And certainly for individuals who have been long-standing working with the government, but do not have security of tenure. The idea there is ensuring that they can, in fact, once they've worked more than 2 years, at least 2 years, that they can, in fact, enjoy some security with respect to their employment. Of course, it is beneficial to those individuals in particular, but no doubt their families. It then allows them, of course, as being pointed out, the ability to seek out loans or to be able to get security in that way. So hopefully there'll be some happy persons by the end of the year in regards to this matter. Of course, the issue of the workplace and the quality of work is a very important one, especially in this current environment. And so a number of actions that we're seeing in that regard. The whole matter of the minimum wage should not go unmentioned within that context. It's a matter that we've seen for a very long time, which was never implemented. After successive administrations, finally to see that we can have a secure minimum wage is, of course, very important. And it also means, no doubt, that the Labor Department has a task in ensuring that employers do, in fact, follow those requirements. Because, of course, you can have individuals who may be taking advantage of persons, and so they try to pay a lower wage. And so, of course, it is also very important that there is that public knowledge, public education with respect to the matter of the minimum wage and what actions can be taken by an employee if, in fact, their employer is in contravention to those actions. So certainly very, very important there. Wanted to share a piece that I think is pretty interesting, and in respect of a particular building which many persons in St. Lucia have associated with the police. Of course, we were just speaking about the police for a while, and the matter of the police and where it is housed has been a matter of discourse for some people. The police have been housed at Bridge Street for a number of years now, and in fact that dates back pretty far. I think to maybe about in the early 1900s. In fact, is when I think the first police offices were actually, or purpose-built police offices were built for the police. Or at least the one that is currently there was actually constructed somewhere around 1904. In fact, that is the building which has just recently been upgraded to become the custody suites. And that was the original police office. But, of course, many people associate, although right now the police operate out of Chesterfield, Chesterfield was a neighboring property to the government complex at Bridge Street. Chesterfield was effectively, for most of its time, and still is a privately owned property which the government rents, in fact, and was at one point also a guest house, a hotel. But the building that tends to be associated with the police is one which is not really being utilized very much right now. and that is that police headquarters building, which is a two-level structure at Upper Bridge Street, right next to the current custody suites. And that building was not actually ever built, originally not built for the police at all. And interesting enough, it was in fact constructed for paupers, for individuals who did not have the benefit of a home, persons who would have been destitute, persons who were, on the streets, vagrants, persons who may have, for whatever different reasons, did not have their own homes. And so it was originally constructed as a paupers asylum. And interesting enough, it was also associated with a name which has somewhat been forgotten, perhaps, by many in society, but the name of Baron. And that individual, his name lived on, if you like, as a result of certain buildings that were actually constructed by Mr. Barron over the years. Now, the two of them were, they were in fact three that were actually constructed through his good generosity. And effectively, Barron was a local, well-to-do individual who left a pretty large sum of money as part of a trust for the purpose of assisting the people of the colony of St. Lucia at the time, back in the 1800s. And there was the Barron Wing, which is associated with the what was then the Victoria Hospital. He, in fact, was associated with funding a part of that hospital. And so, of course, that's why the name Barron still comes out within that context. And the home for senior citizens down in Malgré-Tout in Soufrière was also built by Barron during that period of time, the late 1800s. But in fact, the building that is generally associated with the police was actually built for the purpose of supporting the poor of Castries. And so just to read the story, in fact, which comes out of the Voice of St. Lucia newspaper from 1887, where they speak to this whole matter of the Barron's Trust. And I want to recognize Mr. Timothy Favre for actually sharing this piece, which he was able to dig up out of the archives, online archives, I suspect, on the matter of the Barron's Trust. And this story reads as follows. With the £2,000 left by the late Celigny Baron for the relief of the poor of St. Lucia, a building is about to be erected on the site between the Poor Asylum and the gate of Chesterfield House as a refuge for destitute women. The house will have a frontage of 70 feet on Bridge Street and will be 44 feet in depth, inclusive of a deep veranda of stone pillars in the front center of both basement and first floor. The material to be employed will be stone throughout, faced with red brick, with corners and edgings of concrete blocks. The building will accommodate 40 persons easily if half the room is not taken up for a dispensary and for housing a dispenser and a matron, as we hear is contemplated. Surely, we have enough dispensaries already at the Poor Asylum and at the Victoria Hospital without opening another next door to the first. There is enough money spent already in this way without a perfectly superfluous triplicating of the institution and staff in Castries. It is merely to be that the dispenser of the poor asylum is to be moved into the Barons. Sorry, if it merely be that the dispenser of the poor asylum is to be moved into the Barons' poorhouse, we must protest against it. By retaining the dispenser and the dispensary at the asylum where they now are and have been for years, room will be left in the house for 10 more poor people, and this is a greater advantage than the mere gratification of any childish whim of small officials to get into new quarters. We do not see any provision made for a living room. The division is merely into wards. The inference, therefore, is that the place is to be practically a hospital and a dispensary. But we have ample accommodation in this way already, and Selini Barron's will points to an intention to house the needy poor of his country, not to build a hospital. Of course, we shall be told the dispensers and the matrons' quarters at the poor asylum are inconvenient. Just let me get the rest of the story from another page. And it is this new place was not to be put up. The inconvenience is not such as would compel them to give up their situations. We are making sufficient concessions for official convenience, as it is without having the utility of a public building reduced by half merely for the use and comfort of underlings. The style of the building is a pointed Gothic throughout, with a pitched roof and gables over the projecting wings. If the plan is carried out without every understrapper in the colonial office having a stupid finger in it, the building will be an ornament to the town and a credit to Mr. Henry Reeve, the colonial engineer who has designed it. And as I mentioned, that story coming from an article which was published on the 14th of September, 1889 in the Voice of St. Lucia, speaking to the matter of that building, the Barons' Asylum, which was built on Crown property for the purpose of the poor of the colony, or the poor of St. Lucia. Unfortunately, while the building was built, and of course we see the building very much present today, but unfortunately it hardly ever got used for the intended purpose. And in fact, not too long after that, I believe it ended up in fact being utilized for government offices, such as the education, the superintendent of education. His office was there in like the early 1900s, and other government offices ended up being placed within that very lovely building. Later on, the police, I suppose, expanding required the space, and in fact it ended up being utilized by the police. The dispensary that is being made reference to right now would have actually been between Custody Suites and the Castries River, so sort of in the forecourt region of that site, where in fact the police barracks were eventually built. That would have been the equivalent of the Castries Health Center at that time, and of course served for quite a long time as that purpose. And of course the Royal Jail was to the east of all three of those buildings. Of course that came to an untimely demise back in the year 2020, May the 23rd, 2020. And so these buildings are the last, those two buildings are the last of that era of buildings, with the Baron Asylum building, in fact, being the oldest of the two right now on that site, it being completed somewhere around 1894. And as I said, about 10 years later, the police barracks, which is currently the custody suites, which was just recently expanded upon, that building was built back in 1904. And so it is certainly part of the heritage of Castries. As to what will be the fate of that building in the long run, I think there have been concerns regarding the indoor air quality, but as with a lot of buildings, and certainly in need of maintenance, in need of some sprucing up and improvement, but certainly a very, very lovely building still to this day, forming part of the historic fabric of the city of Castries. And certainly it should, whatever is done within that site, hopefully it can in fact be kept perhaps as maybe a justice museum, a museum that has some context within what is done. But also what is very telling though is how in those days you had the goodwill of people still, even with a gentleman like Mr. Barron, putting down a place for homeless people, homeless women, destitute women, for the city, for Castries, for the St. Lucia. And we think up to a day like today, and still we are in need of those types of facilities. Of course, we recognize the work that is done by Cornerstone. They continue to labor on with their efforts to be able to deal with the issue of homelessness. But of course, we still are seeing the challenges of homelessness in and around the city of Castries, particularly it tied to individuals who are dealing with a number of different issues, quite possibly in some instances drug abuse. In other instances, it might be senility and old age and abandonment. And so a lot of those issues are still very present, and the need for a center to be able to support that social work that has to be done is very, very, very important. And so it's interesting that we are seeing this conversation because coming up now on social media, because persons sometimes mistook this building for another building that was built by Barron down in Soufrière. But of course, it is certainly a part of the history that we certainly sometimes don't know about. And there was goodwill by many out there in the past, and certainly let's hope that we can continue to see goodwill being shown, because even in today's context, you hear that argument sometimes being made that, you know, the wealthy will give back, right? And this is what, especially in the United States of America, the argument that is made for sort of a trickle-down economics of, allow the wealthy to attain their wealth, and there's no need for taxation or any sort of high taxation. The wealthy will effectively give back their wealth by way of philanthropic undertakings. Sometimes it happens, and of course we've seen the likes of Bill Gates, for example. He's given back quite a lot of his wealth. Warren Buffett, as well as some of the notable philanthropists. But at the same time, we know that there are some incredibly wealthy individuals in the United States, and you're not really seeing that level of generosity coming from them naturally. So it is an interesting state of play, because especially as we're seeing where the world is going in terms of work, where we're seeing a lot more that is going to be done in terms of automation and robotics and AI, that is actually causing for some jobs to disappear. And that is the nature of progress, right? That is the nature of how many things work. There was a time when you would have needed, maybe hundreds of typists, and persons who are doing just that, for a certain time, or persons who are recording things. And now look at how that has changed over the years, to the point where with meetings, for example, you've got AI handling meeting minutes and notes. And so it really is a situation where we're entering in a world, an era, where additional jobs are potentially going to be lost. Are new jobs going to be created to replace those jobs? It's really yet to be seen. But effectively, the workplace is evolving. The workplace is changing. Sometimes that might be for the better. And we have seen how there was a time when a 12-hour work day was almost expected. All right, that has changed, and people are working fewer hours now. Right now, we still take the 8-hour workday as a norm, but in many countries, some Scandinavian countries, for example, are cutting back, looking at a 4-day week, looking at allowing people more time to be able to take care of their families and to be able to enjoy themselves. And so that may very well be part of the future that we're going to have to be looking at, the restructuring of the workspace. And some of the norms that we take for granted may very well change. For all we know, maybe the 4-day weekend, the 3-day weekend might be a reality sometime soon in St. Lucia. Well, let's see. The other issue, of course, about the idea of leave, and we're seeing that too becoming very topical in some places, the whole idea of paternity leave, major issues in countries like Japan, for example, where they're actually seeing, trying to encourage families. And so as a result of that, the whole thrust of trying to reverse the decline in the population is to incentivize space for men as well as women in terms of family life. So a lot of those issues, of course, will be very important to discuss and to look at to ensure that we as a society too are not just keeping up with the times, but we're also ensuring that we are doing good by our own and also making the necessary adjustments to be able to have better quality of life. That's our program here for today, and we do hope that you can have a wonderful weekend. Quite a number of activities going on, no doubt, including some political ones. I think a meeting launch of Mr. Danny Butcher, the St. Lucia Labour Party candidate for VA4 South, is in fact going to be happening down at VA4 on Sunday. So others, of course, we'll have to look out for. But we do hope that whatever you're up to, you will have yourself a very blessed weekend. Take care.